3, 2, 1. Mike Padgham, you are the director of St. Cecilia's Care Group. You are the past chair of the UKHCA, and you're currently the chair of the Independent Care Group. Welcome to the Care Home Show.
And welcome to you too, Simon, and thank you for allowing me to take part. Looking forward to it.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Obviously, we've been talking for a little bit now, so it's great to make it happen. So, as the kind of the regular audience will know, I always like to start the shows with a very simple question, and that's just to get an understanding of where did you start in the care sector? Kind of how did it all come together?
How did it all start? Yes, well, good question. I often ask myself that question. I know I don't look too bad. I guess it's 30 odd years perhaps since I've been in the care sector, but how did it all start for me? Well, I think before I actually got straight into the care sector directly, I did do some voluntary work in a local hospital. I'm originally from Sussex, and I was doing that. I first started in engineering, believe it or not. And at that time, at the weekends, I used to volunteer, and I used to do work on some of the wards, this is in the 1980s, so a fair few years ago, when you didn't need too many checks and what have you to be able to do it. So they asked for volunteers, and you went in and did a stint. And I can remember doing 8-hour shifts at the weekends on a ward of older people. Mm-hmm. And that's my first experience, I guess, of care, but it wasn't a career for me. And then I was in engineering, as I said, and then I went into hospital management after that. And that's where it started, where I met my wife. She was a nurse, or she is a nurse. And we moved around the country and ended up in Cardiff working for South Glamorgan Health Authority, which was the third largest in those days in the UK. And I ended up being their spokesperson on various issues. And you can imagine, as it is today, it's normally when things go wrong. So I was the one who's put up front to try and answer questions that I had nothing to do with in terms of what happened, trying to make the best case for the health authority. My wife was a nurse in Cardiff at that time, and he said to me one day, she'd been to social care providers and thinks, or said to me, I think we could probably do a good job in this, perhaps a better job in some ways. Shall we do something? So we discussed, and we went all over the country looking for places, the Northwest, Scotland, Wales, and then we ended up in the Northeast in Scarborough, because we looked at research about where the elderly population was going to be growing. And we took over a very tiny home in the early 1990s in Scarborough, and we're still here today. So that's how I got started.
Wow.
Direct care provision, 31 years now. So, and we started working in it right at the sharp end in terms of providing care. And we worked 24/7. Not every hour of the day, but that's what we want. We both had good jobs, professional jobs, no family, left, took over a care home, a very small care home with 8 people in it. But suddenly we had 8 people that we inherited, because in those days, this is before Care Standards Act. This is when homes were regulated by the local authority.
Sure.
So there we were with no family, suddenly 8 people. We couldn't go out together to the shop or anything. Suddenly we found ourselves, wow, we've inherited 8 people, and that's where it started, really. We had some staff, but very few, so we were doing night shifts, personal care, cooking, you name it. So I guess when I speak to people today, I can say that I have been in it and done the work at the sharp end, all jobs really, from top to bottom.
I guess at kind of at that, as you say, the sharp end and things like that, it'd be almost impossible not to.
Yes, quite. But I think that gives me an insight to how the sector works. And I think, I'm quite proud, I guess, in a way, to say that I've done everything, because I haven't come straight in at the top or had another business or, put some money in, decided I can run it. So I've been through the whole thing. And we're not, we're very tiny still in the bigger picture, but I feel that we've made a difference. And that experience over the years has helped me where I am. And I think it helps me with staff in terms of saying that I have done the work. I know what they've been through. I wouldn't want to do it today. Of course, I'm quite happy what I'm doing, but I know how challenging it is for them and the type of work. And I think they respect a little bit that we've been through, how can I put it, the harder work as well.
I guess that level of understanding, that sympathetic perspective that you got from doing that, again, it from your team's perspective, they can recognise the fact that you've done the kind of hard yards on the front line as such, which I guess must be really quite powerful.
People, I mean, obviously, I'm an avid user of Twitter and social media, and I do get people asking me or telling me that I don't know what it's like, but I don't tend to answer all those people on Twitter, because you're forever in a debate. But I can tell them, hand on heart, is I do know what it's like. I've been there, but I did, we've made our own success and career out of it, if you see what I mean. I think it's partly down to you, what you want to do. If you want to move on and you think it's hard work, then you can achieve what you want to achieve. We didn't start off with any money. We've made what we have as we've gone along. So I think it's possible for everybody. But yeah, it's tough, but it's good that we've experienced it, if you see what I mean, I think. Yeah,
definitely. There's a journey, and it's inevitability. You do what you do for 30 years. That's a whole lot of practice.
We've had great
some failures in there as well, but as long as you're learning for them and pushing forward for improvements, that's kind of the main thing.
Well, I think, Simon, will probably come up later, from my perspective, is that you've got to fail to succeed in a way. So yes, we've had lots of failures on the way, believe me. We've had lots of successes, and we've enjoyed every minute. Wouldn't change it, even though it's hard work, and we're in deeper now than we ever have been. But thoroughly enjoyable, and I relish the challenge, because I think for the conversation later we might get on to, well, what things need to change. Well, a heck of a lot. But it's a funny thing, Simon, is that when I first started, many things we're talking about today are still what we were talking about 30 odd years ago. And I have to be in it for a long term, because I think it might take another 30 for it to change. But you have to keep moving with the times.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's fair to say, isn't it? So we'll definitely get onto some of those subjects as we enter into the kind of the body of the show, if you like. But it's really clear that you're very passionate about what you do. So explain to me a little bit around. Okay, so what does what you do mean to you personally, and why is it so important?
Well, I think I like to see that people get the best care they possibly can, and in our line where we're providing care for older people, is that we help them on that journey from when they need care through to the end of life. So it means a lot to me personally to see they get a good quality of life in their later years, but also importantly to the families, because my view is you're often helping the families as much as the client, and taking them with you and helping them is part of it. So it means a lot to me personally, because it's human relations. It's all about human beings, that sort of service. So I just want people to get the type of care and be looked after that I would like myself. And it does, I'll be biased. I don't think we treat older people in this country as well as we ought to. I think it's all up to us to make sure later that when we get there, we are looked after right. Because as soon as you start to, need people's help and become a bit more frail, if you're not careful, I think in today's society, you sort of push to the back. So I think it's all in our interest to make sure care later is good. And that's why it's so much to me personally.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to be said around shaping the future of care, to put it bluntly. But again, that's stuff that we'll definitely talk about as we get into things. So I know that you're quite passionate around campaigning for the sector, well, what are the sector challenges that you focus your attention on? Where does your campaigning kind of steer its direction, and what is it you're looking to achieve?
Goodness, I think, how long have we got? I don't want to bore people with podcast 2, 3, and 4. I'll try and be as quick as I can on it. I suppose, as I said earlier on, from my perspective, many of the things today have not changed in all that time. So I guess when I first started and I came into it, is I could see it was a very low pay sector. I could see that what was being paid for care wasn't sufficient. When I started, the funding was coming from the Department of Health and Social Security. So in my career, it's moved from that to local authorities. But, I understand the reasons why. I think it was Mrs. Thatcher that made the changes. She could see that budget growing exponentially. So she tried to curtail that by giving it to local authorities, who, believe me, have done a fantastic job on cost control. I sympathise them, but they have kept the fee levels down, which has been their focus, I think, because it's taken a lot of money. But, in my view, nationally, that's the wrong way, because we've always tried to provide care for older people too much, in my view, for not enough funds. So I've been campaigning, or passionate about what staff get paid, but also about what government, local authorities, the health service, and maybe even the public are willing to pay for care. I think it's been undervalued in the past. And that's the issue, is getting education for the public, that if you want good care, it costs money. You want staff to be paid well and trained, then you're going to have to pay for that somewhere along the line. So staffing and the fees and quality, I guess. And I've been through, well, when I first started, it was the local authorities inspected. Then it became the National Standards Commission, I believe, and then it was the Commission for Social Care Inspection. Now it's the Care Quality Commission. So all the way along, it's been a challenge for inspections. And, you know, they've all had their challenges. And I think CQC today is still being challenged. It can't do right for wrong with the public or with providers. I sympathise with them. But I think the issue is really, if we want better quality care, and everybody does, and we want to raise the standards, then we have to make sure we pay for it. The challenge is we've been asked to raise standards, but the funding hasn't followed. So we're right at that edge, I think, of high standards, but balancing on that, how can we keep improving? Not easy, unless you're all publicly or privately funded, I should say. So staffing, funds, inspection, that's the challenges for me. And if for the sake of boring people, I think I'm right in saying that there's 1.5 million people today not getting any care whatsoever, and that's a scandal. And I'd like to draw the government's attention to that. But I think there's some other points in this interview later which we'll have time to focus on. But yeah, if that's not too much rambling, that's my focus really.
Got you. No, I think that's a great summary. So what does that actually look like? Okay, so give me some insights around it, the type of work that you do, because I guess a reasonable amount of it's just kind of awareness. But how does one go about raising the awareness on, obviously?
Well, that's a tough thing. I think, as I said, we're a small business. Have been small, are small. I think we've got 4 care homes currently and a daycare, and we have been involved in domiciliary care. But throughout my career, rightly or wrongly, and I think you just say, well, this was one of my errors, I've had a lot of my focus of attention on work outside. So in the very early days, I joined the local care association, and I'm rolling forward a little bit. Then I got elected to the chair of that, which I've been doing for more years than I care to mention. And then also in that period, I was chair of the UKHCA for 11 years. So a lot of my attention has been focused on other things than my own business, but social care. So, you know, I don't know whether that's good or bad, but I've done a little bit of work on it. I've been on the board of Care England. I enjoyed that. So I've tried to do what I can from a small provider, and making a loud voice, either locally with the local authorities or nationally with government. I did a spell as a Department of Health change agent when I was working with Care England, and I did what I can to make a change. But as I said just now, all the civil servants, all those ministers, I think there've been 12 over the period that I've been involved. We keep getting back to the same things. You keep repeating yourself. To actually, they ask what needs to change, and we keep telling them, but they don't listen. So, what might come through this interview is that never give up what you're doing. You have to keep working on it, and recruitment and what people are paid, and the training, and the how seriously government takes social care. That's never changed, and they still haven't focused it right up to this current moment. In the last few days, Boris Johnson says, "Well, let's have some cross-party talks. Let's have a discussion, and then we may solve it in the next Parliament." When a few weeks before that, he'd said he's going to solve it once and for all. I've heard that more times than I care to remember. Everyone saying, "Let's change it." I don't know about Brexit, but let's get today is a historic day, isn't it, on Brexit? Well, I'm hoping Brexit Part 1. That when this happens tonight, and we're speaking on the 31st of January, that social care can take its place for the top of the government's agenda for domestically. Now we've sorted Brexit Part 1. Let's put the same energy and views into solving social care, not let's wait weeks. And I won't swear. Forget these cross-party talks, because we got a leadership election in the Labour government. We got the Liberal Democrats trying to get new leaders. Let's just get on with it, because all we've had over years is discussions, papers. I think time for action is now.
Yeah, there's, and I guess this is why you've been talking about many of the same things time and time again. Social care always just kind of gets kicked off into the long grass as not being a priority, and it baffles me, and it baffles obviously you and many others, of course, that surely it can't continue at this rate. It's not going to get, certainly not going to get better, and if any changes aren't being made.
Well, I spoke at a university in Scarborough yesterday over this very issue. Is people ask me, it can't carry on, can it? And I say, no, it can't. And then here we go, it carries on. I think it's held together by goodwill of people in the sector, to be honest. And they get into the end of what they can do, but it's surprising the human spirit what can be achieved. So I think all the time we keep helping and moving, the government will let us do it. But I think there's a point we're going to reach at some stage in the not too distant future where we can't carry on. But I've no magic bullet as to why politicians won't listen. My own view politically, and I was completely wrong in the last election. In my view, the party that had the worst, I'm not being political in this, I'm just stating as I see it, the facts is, the party that had the worst track record in terms of what they were going to do in the manifesto for social care was the Conservatives. The best policies, I guess, were in Labour, but, was that affordable? Lib Dems, I'm not sure on. But then the party that had the worst plan for social care is the one that got a bigger majority. So I was completely wrong. The public were focused on Brexit. I think social care one day will be the key issue in an election. Maybe it'll be the next one, but I've got it wrong so far. And it's only the public, I think, can help change it, because if they're telling the politicians they want something done, they'll listen. But I don't think politicians see votes in social care. That's the problem. So it gets down the bottom of the list.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably one of the key reasons it does get kicked off into the long grass. Just to your point, yeah, it's not a vote winner. One would hope that and unfortunately, what this probably looks like is people probably suffering, which is extremely unfortunate. But it almost needs to become more of a disaster for it to become on people's agenda. Therefore, it's what the public are talking about, and that's what the public demand when it comes to policy and to politics as a whole, the whole approach.
Right. I agree with you, Simon. I think the challenge, what I can't quite get my head around for the public's perception is, quite rightly, if we see children suffering, or if we see take transport delays on trains, Northern Rail was in the news yesterday. If we take, we haven't had too much bad weather yet, but if we get people stuck on a motorway or overnight on a train, big issue. But how come the public's not clamouring for the 1.5 million people that I mentioned earlier who are not getting any care? That's scandal, surely. But if it was 100 people or 100 children, that would be front page. But how come these 1.5 million are invisible? So you wonder what it's going to take.
Yeah, sorry, my apologies for cutting over you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember hearing, I can't recollect where the quote came from, but for one person to die unnecessarily is an atrocity. For 1,000 people to die or to suffer unnecessarily, it's a statistic, and it's almost like there's a different view there from a public perception that. Yeah, it's almost, again, it's a different perspective. And unfortunately not one that's going to best serve social care and looking after vulnerable people at the end of the day. So what do you think, so how do you think that people can affect change? So typically probably people in the sector, but what's your view on that?
I think, are we talking about the general public, or perhaps we'll do the general public and then people in the sector itself? General public, well, I think it's an education system that's going to be generational, really. As I think it's going right back to school, and before that, it's about how parents and society values older people, but also social care. Really, health and social care are very important together, but health always overtakes. So if we want to focus on that, then it's got to be about how important social care is in older people, and that's starting from younger children. Eventually, when it works its way through, they're held in higher respect. But it's not overnight. And I've always thought social care is quite a young industry. If we call it industry, people might say it's not an industry, but I use that word for now. Is that, when it's a bit more mature, I think things will change. It's still very young. So I think the public play a big part, and education, but also providers have to change ourselves. And I think, again, strange thing, I'm smiling a little bit, Simon, because I've been involved in national and local associations for a while, is if we could somehow, and it's been tried before but not succeeded, if we could somehow, it's almost more challenging than Brexit, if we could find a way of uniting our sector a bit better, then I think we'd have a much stronger, louder voice. Easy to say, but I think we could do with fewer associations and some stronger ones where we're more united, because I think we could get the respect of government much better if we were firmer, and we might be able to take some action, but people have tried it, but we haven't quite managed to get there. I think it will come eventually, but I think that's one thing that we as a sector could do, is join and be stronger and say we're not having this, such as maybe the BMA says, or the National Farmers Union. I'd like a day when the Secretary of State or the Prime Minister rings a national association and says we need to talk, things can't carry on, or they react when we ask for a meeting. We've got our own work to do. Got our own, get our own house in order as well. So it's a two-way thing, really.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'd be inclined to agree with that. Slight change of gear. One of the things, obviously, you're immensely passionate about the social care world. So last year was the inaugural Celebrate Social Care event, and I understand that you'll be doing the same event in October this year as well. Tell me a little bit about the event and kind of, why did you choose to start to do the event first? Actually, there's a good place to start.
In my sort of longevity in social care, I've been involved in awards, and there's when we first started, there weren't many awards out there for social care. Now they seem to be almost one every few days. I think they're a good thing. Why I came up with this time is I wanted to, several things really. I wanted something that recognised frontline care staff, but it wasn't an award ceremony. So what we had is people to come, have a bit of entertainment, let their hair down, but we're not giving any awards, because I think that's well taken care of elsewhere. This was to have fun. So that was one aim, but it was for frontline staff. The second aim really was I wanted something, a bit further north, because again, lots of things happen, but the north was in the north.
Sure.
And then, being totally selfish, is in our county, North Yorkshire, which is England's biggest county, is everything that happens is always in another part, never very much on the coast. So I said, right, we'll have something on the coast for a change. And so I put the first section on. People came from all over the country, predominantly for the north, but people came from all over the country. So anyone's welcome. Mm-hmm. And lots of people came from North Yorkshire, from the other side. And it was a good event. It was for frontline care staff. And I got sponsors together so that home care providers, care homes, daycare, and whether local authority or whether they're private sector or independent sector, could come and they could afford for their care staff, who were the key players, to have a good night out. So I based it on award ceremonies without awards. So we had some top level entertainment, some fun, and it was really good. And then I was asked if we could do it again. So we're doing it this October, 26th of October. So but there is a website, celebratesocialcare.com, if people want to come and have a look wherever they are. We've got some businesses. We've got the Care Badge people. I'm very proud to wear the Care Badge, sponsoring it as well. But it's for frontline care staff, basically, so they can come and have some fun. Because I make the point, I've said this publicly and privately, care staff is not the best paid job. They deserve more, but this is a way of helping a little bit. But it's not just the end of what we can do. It's a partly for raising the profile of social care locally and nationally as well.
Sure. I love the concept. And it's nice that you decided to do something different with it as well. I think that's important. And you are right. I mean, I'm sat here as we're talking in Greenwich, and I'm surrounded by events and conferences and seminars and things all of the time. I could probably go out one day a week, most weeks of the year, to go to some type of healthcare or care type event. But obviously that's just kind of within the boundaries of the tube network almost. So yeah, I mean the cares everywhere throughout the country, so it's important to make sure that the whole country is included in this the raising of the profile of the sector as well. So I think great idea.
I hope, Simon, that you could, that you might be able to come this year in sunny Scarborough. It's not sunny today, but it can at certain times of the summer look a bit like the Mediterranean, so you might see it in a different light. But we hope that you can come, and people from all over the country. We're going to be bold and ask some key figures, some politicians nationally, to come as well. And I hope that it will be as successful this year as it was last year.
That'd be great. Well, I've got the date in my calendar. As I said earlier, I think short of anything drastic happening, I'm going to make my way to Scarborough.
Yes.
A couple of people have actually recommended Scarborough to me in one way, shape, or form. So I feel that this is a prime opportunity to come and see your part of the world. And to your point as well, it sounds like a beautiful part of the world as well. So hopefully, come to do some adventuring.
You'll be very welcome.
In and around the countryside as well. So that'd be great. Tell me a little bit about your group of care homes, so St Cecilia's Care Group.
Yes.
Fascinated to learn a little bit more about, because I guess you kind of, when we were talking about how you got into the sector, you kind of, you got to a point where you explained about the kind of the beginning of the journey, if you like, but explain a little bit more. So you got from the single care home, and you got your 8 residents, and it sounded like a bit of a baptism of fire in many ways. Bring us up to the present day. So tell us about that journey.
I think it's been a journey that we've been exciting. There's been a few potholes we've got into. We had a few punctures along the way, and had to change the vehicle once or twice. But I think that we are a family now. So our family, we've got 3 children. They were born here, and one of those now is in the family business with us. So he is helping us take us forward. So we went from one home, we expanded the size of that, and then we went into daycare and domiciliary care.
Sure.
And then we acquired some other homes, and we are where we are today, 4 homes and daycare, and we're looking at re-entering the home care market in due course as well. So we were trying to provide a continuum of care. So we will eventually be caring people's homes, daycare, residential care for people with dementia, and nursing care and end-of-life care. So that's our plan.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've specialised in trying to provide the best possible care for the publicly funded market. We do provide some care for private funders, but our main thrust has been local authority funded. Now, that brings some challenges with it from what I mentioned earlier, because the fees aren't quite right. But I believe that we should be, and the country should make sure there's a good standard of care for people who rely on the publicly funded. And a challenge for the future, which I hadn't mentioned earlier, is that if we're not careful, that if you can't afford to pay for your own care, you might find that you have to move away from where you were living to get the care you need, because local authority can't afford care locally. And I think that's the responsibility of government to make sure there is care where people live. So that's our thrust. So I'm being open and honest with you, Simon, in this is I'd like to think our carers provide good care, but they're not all looking like 5-star hotels. Some are a little bit tired. We try and invest as much as we can in it, and we want to do more in it. But people say they're homely. So, I'm giving you the bare bones. The business is successful. We're all rated as good. We want to do better, but it's a continual journey to improve what we're doing over time. So that's where we are today. And we hope to grow a little bit more, not for vanity, but to be a small provider is not easy. There's a lot of competition, and we have to be a bit bigger than we are. So we've got 160 staff and 110 beds. We have to go a bit further to make sure we can cement our place in the future. So growth by acquisition at the right time is our motto. That's always a challenge for a small group with banks. Sometimes it's easier if you're bigger to go further, but we want to get it right and not grow for vanity, but grow for business and to provide better care.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. There's that kind of underlying kind of message within all that is it's about getting it right. It's about the quality and the quality first, which is obviously immensely important for you.
Well, one thing I say to people, this is not any criticism of any type of operator, but I think we have the issue of living in the area we provide the care, and people can see you're visible, and they won't hold back. If something's not right, they'll see me on a Sunday or a Saturday or an evening and say this, and this. And I think we are where we are, and we have a responsibility to the community. We are accessible, and that's part of the prison for our sector. Sometimes people are saying, well, who are these people that provide the care? They're all offshore, well, we're certainly not offshore, but close to the sea. We can be got at if we need to be. Let's put it that way. So we have to make sure we get it right, but we want to get it right. But the majority of people are doing the best they can in difficult circumstances, and I think that's challenging for us, because as an industry, it's like saying all MPs are bad. They're not all bad. The vast majority are good, but there's a few rogues. Well, in care, we've got something similar, but everybody calls you the same. You get called a rogue and making bucket loads of money out of older people and paying the staff a pittance. Well, the majority of people aren't doing that. They want to provide happy staff, happy home, happy clients. Yeah. But the press doesn't help us sometimes. There's always somebody that says social care should not be provided in the private sector. Money grabbing, profit driven, leeches is what you get. I mean, you get called all sorts of things, don't you? It's tough, but I'm saying we've got a bit of work to do ourselves to show that we do care.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've done a friend of mine, Adam Hutchison, and I almost did an entire episode just on this subject around the Daily Mail lambasting the sector with sensationalized headlines. And don't get me wrong, that you can't. We shouldn't not recognise, obviously, the shortfallings in certain organisations, but it's very much that's the exception rather than
the definitely.
To your
and I think, and what I've done, Simon, in the past is, I try and show people the good and the bad side. I've been honest with you in terms of our own facility. We have made mistakes. We have got it wrong sometimes, but I have opened up. So we have done quite a bit in the media. I mean, on the BBC particularly, we've had a couple of national stories. We've let them BBC come into the home, warts and all, and they have filmed. And I've got into a bit of hot water once or twice with local authority and CQC. But I think I've shown as it is, and they've interviewed the staff and the residents without any. They wouldn't editorially let you see what they're saying. And I've tried to be brave in that respect and got a bit of stick for it. But I've got nothing to hide. But I think providers have got to open up a bit sometimes and show that. Admit sometimes when we get it wrong. We've got a bit of work to do, but I've tried to show that come and see what it's like. Because in my campaigning work, to say we're providing the best care we can, but this is it. We're short of staff. Even that word, CQC got me into a hole. I think everyone could admit sometimes that they're short of staff. It's not for the want of trying. Recruiting is tough. Is what are we supposed to do if we can't get any staff? We can't shut. Those are some of the challenges. So
Tell me, okay, so obviously we've kind of leaned towards some of the challenges of the sector, but what are the biggest challenges that you're facing at the moment, and what are you doing within St. Cecilia's to try and address some of those challenges? Right.
I guess, as I said earlier, it's been challenging ever since we started, but toughest I've ever known, really, and I said it genuinely, toughest I've ever known it, recruiting staff. I think we're on about, nationally, I think the figures are 30% turnover. We'll just be below that. But so demand on our services is quite high. We're very close to full occupancy, but we do run recruitment all the time, basically, and it's being different. We know that staff coming into care are going to we're going to need more. And we mentioned Brexit, didn't we? Well, there's a challenge there because a lot of the staff, we've got quite a proportion of staff in our homes from overseas, from Europe. They're obviously staying, but the messages they give, if we didn't have them, we couldn't operate.
Cool.
I fear for the future, how can we keep meeting the standard CQC 1 and provide care for more complex cases and make the business work? We want to pay the staff more, so we've had to revise pay twice again this year. But we're stuck up one because the local authorities can't pay anymore. So the biggest challenge is we want to recruit staff in a very tough world, and we're not the best pay. So that's the bit to me is at the top of the list is how we're going to do it. So we're trying all novel ways. Last year, I did a campaign when we offered nurses a car and a holiday before they joined us. We did get inundated that time, but we've got to think outside the box. But as a limit to what we can do without funding, and that goes back to full circle, is we want better care. We as a country have got to pay for it, but we seem to be blind to that at the minute.
Yeah, it's a tough set of circumstances, isn't it? Especially, I guess in the world that you operate, where you're predominantly publicly funded. Ultimately, it means that your margins are just about as tight as they could be, even with the most positive intent. It's difficult to be able to do what you want to be able to achieve within the boundaries that present you.
what I think is tough is that so you're working on fewer staff than you'd ideally like, is then they're working longer shifts and under more stress. So it's a vicious circle. They maybe have to take time off, and then you even less staff.
Yeah,
I know some of it's in our hands, but I don't think all responsibility is in our hands. We have got to address pay. People say it's not all about pay, but if you're only just above the national living wage, I don't think people can live and afford even one holiday a year on that sort of level of pay.
so
And with Lidl and others, paying £10 or £11 an hour, I think we've got to be in the £15, £16 an hour for social care staff. How do we get there? Well, the government would have to give local authorities more. The taxpayer would have to pay more. But I think people will willingly do that for better care for themselves later. But to be a social care member of staff, very challenging, very talented, very skilled. And why would you do all that and only just get a living wage? It's a fundamental issue there. And I have to put myself in that. I am paid just above the living wage. So I put myself as I'm an employer who could do better, who could do more. But I've got the challenges of the bank covenants to meet, the CQC regulations, and making a profit. And a profit in care seems a dirty word sometimes, but to be regulated, CQC, you have to be a viable business, which means you've got to make a profit.
Of course. It's an interesting one, isn't it? And I mean, I think in some senses, profit is a dirty word. I don't believe that it should be. I think,
isn't that a sort of thing in this country generally anyways? Again, not bringing politics into it, but, it's not illegal. And I would say from our perspective, I make a decent living for my family. But then, as I said at the beginning, we've done it ourselves.
You built that yourself.
So I don't apologise for it, but we're not earning a fortune. We're comfortable. But I'd like other people to be comfortable. So, I don't lay awake at night worrying about how low we pay the staff, but I would like it to be better for them. And be open and honest with you again. And I would like to change it, but I'm maybe I'm complicit in it. I don't know, but I'm doing my best.
And I think that's the best thing that you can do at the end of the day. I as a business owner, you need to make sure that your business is sustainable. And that's the thing. I think that's probably one of the things that people who see profit as being a more of a negative thing, they don't necessarily understand maybe the dynamics of business and the fact that if you don't make a profit, then you don't have an opportunity to reinvest. If you don't reinvest, you don't change with the times, then ultimately eventually your business is going to become obsolete. I mean, a lot of the homes that get themselves into real trouble. One would imagine. I mean, I've never looked at this figure specifically, but they're probably the ones that don't have. They've got lots of exposure to the local authority market. They're probably not able to invest in training. Their capex spend is probably lower than what it should be, and it just ends up turning into a downward spiral.
Yeah.
The business owners that I know that they make a healthy profit, but I tell you what, they love reinvesting it, making sure the environment's great, making sure that the training's great, making sure the residents have really special, meaningful experiences through their kind of life's journey at the homes that they live in. And I think that only comes about through having that profit surplus, whatever you want to call it.
And as you said earlier, Simon, is that you don't hear about the ones that who are doing that. You only hear where it's not going right. The vast majority are doing the right thing. But we've got to make sure the public are aware of that. But yeah, I suppose in my view, there's a debate in the country to be had at some time. Solving once and for all, is social care right in the independent sector? And majority is now providing this sector, but I'm not sure the public realise that. And I think there's a debate to be had. The analogy I've drawn over my experience of the years is like 1948 when the health service came in. GPs who were private contractors, still are private contractors, were brought into the service. I'm wondering in the future whether in fact we in the private sector will be brought in to the state service but still be independent, if that makes sense, similar to how GPs work. Because I think the current model needs looking at radically, and I could see a role, because if you take my area, most of what I do is for the public sector, but I'm a private business. If it all goes wrong for me, you're shut overnight, whereas people in it don't deserve that. We've got to find a better way of managing it, I think. I'm not talking about nationalisation, I'm talking about how the health service work in GPs, and that model worked, and there's still independent contractors and business people today, although the public don't always realise it. Surely there's something. Most
of the population of the country don't recognise that's the case.
If I just add one thing, you can see how powerful that is, because if you take GPs, my goodness, the government doesn't mess around with them, does it at their peril. I think we could be as strong as the Royal College of GPs and get much better service if we could somehow be united, because I think the Secretary of State would shudder at GPs shouting out, but I don't think he at the minute, Hancock will shake if he hears social care providers jumping up and down. I don't want to put fear into the government. I'd like them to tremble a little bit when social care providers shout it in the future.
Or certainly listen, and not just listen, but then act upon some of the
definitely
some of the objective information that they're frequently being shared.
I don't know whether you saw the tweet yesterday. I think it was yesterday, from Jeremy Hunt, and talking about social care. He said, if I remember rightly, he said that he hadn't had much chance to do much in social care because it was only 6 months before his office ended as Secretary of State did they tack social care onto his job title. So that was his excuse for not developing social care. I thought it was rather pathetic, but my view is I thought it was always in the job description, might be in the title, but I could be wrong. But I thought it was interesting.
It's interesting
now
how
it says
you can adopt themselves of blame with things, isn't it? So, so coming back onto St. Cecilia's, obviously you've talked about acquisitions potentially at the right time, and I guess you're growing to kind of benefit from economies of scale and things like that to kind of shore up the business's future. Tell me a bit about your vision for what you want to achieve in the future years.
Well, I think we'd like to grow into an area so we provide care in people's own homes, so there's a continuum of care. I think we'd like to look at perhaps moving into the field of supported living.
Okay.
And I think we'd like to look at maybe providing care for others other than older people, maybe learning disabilities.
Okay.
But perhaps older people who've had learning disabilities. I think that's a growing market. But
definitely,
we don't want to provide what everyone else is doing, but we want to provide that niche. So local authority, publicly funded care, a wider range, and make the group stronger. And help get people and rehabilitate them back into their own home if we could. At the minute is when people, if I'm honest again, the way the system works is, I think we sometimes take people's independence away. So once they come to us, very rarely are we able to get anyone rehabilitated and back home. But we'd like to do that and work on payment by result in terms of task. Sorry, not payment by task, but there's no incentive for us to get someone back home. And I think that needs to change. Apart from the human element of incentive.
Of course, yeah. But I see where you're going with that. It's interesting. I've spoken to, I speak to more and more people who are interested in kind of the different iterations of care. So looking at their community and saying, okay, so what's going on in the community? How can we better serve the people? And it's more of a macro view. To look at the care pathway as well, and then say, okay, so what can we do to better support people to make sure that if somebody needs to go and live in a care home, that they have an opportunity to go and live in a great care home. But if that's not where they are in their life's journey, that they've got other good options as well, and that might look like a slightly different care package. But then bringing that all in under one roof, so you've kind of got like a recognized brand again within the communities that you're serving. Is that am I kind of in the right direction there?
Yeah, I would say so. It's fitting around people's lifestyles and what they want. But the minute is we seem to have got something that you take it or leave it is one type of home and you're there. But I'd like to be able to, and that comes back to flexibility with the Care Quality Commission about what the boundaries are.
Sure.
Interestingly enough, is about the issue about where you can provide nursing care. So there's a lot to do, but I think we want to grow and change. But there's no incentive really to research in social care as much as other industries would do. The analogy I often draw is between what the motor manufacturing industry was given to move away from diesel and petrol cars onto electric. A lot of investment went in. Well, I think our sector could do with a bit of investment to help us to do new models. But again, being open from our end, the model I'm providing is pretty similar to when we first started. People come in, but I'd like to change it. But the local authority commissions on that basis. It doesn't, we keep talking about outcome-based commissioning, but as I said, if I rehabilitate, discharge the backies, I don't get an extra payment. I have an empty bed.
Yeah.
And yeah, I often use this. We in one ways we moved on, in other ways we haven't. But personally, people might criticise this. Our model, we tried to change, is pretty similar to how it has been, and I can't see much change going on in the future at the minute. But we are trying to move forward and change. But I'm almost stuck in that vicious circle of providing, because I've got to keep the business running.
Of course,
there's no time. There's no time to stop, replan, because we've got to pay bills in the bank.
Of course. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you've got, again, that comes back to that sustainability issue, doesn't it? Like the business has got to, it's got to hold its own, and it's got to hold its own so that it works today. And then obviously, I mean, the definition of sustainability is something that works now and works in the future. So obviously really, really important. So it's a careful balancing act that you're making there. It's good that you're doing so with such a level head and with such a positive intent, let's say.
I tend to bore people with, because I'm a bit like a broken record, because nothing much has changed. I tend to bore people at parties and things with going over the challenges and the balances of what it is like to be in social care.
Yeah, it's definitely balance to be met. So, Mike, tell me, because of the journey that you've been on over the last 31 years, you've spent an awful lot of time leading people, and I think that's a really, really important skill for people to have. What have been your greatest or most important leadership lessons over the years?
Well, I think you have to respect your staff, or respect the people who work for you. I think you listen, and they often have a lot of skills that perhaps the leader hasn't got. And I think you should take advantage of that and take their views on board. I think you should be compassionate towards those people who work for you, and lead by example. And I think that means going back to the beginning is I think you've got to know your subject and show people that you've been there and can do it and get respect from them. But also not be afraid, I should say, to make a decision, even if it's the wrong one. Because I've always tried to put the culture in the organisation to say, you might have to try 100 things once, and if you're successful once out of that and 99 failures, that's still progress. But if you don't try anything, you never solve the problem. So a leader, don't be afraid to do something even if it's wrong, and then tell people what you're doing. Communication, leading by example, are the key things, and showing that you can be bold.
It's really interesting that you say that the example of the trying 100 things and keep going until you get the one the one thing that works. A friend of mine actually quoted almost exactly that same thing quite recently, who was she's also the owner of a care business. So that's obviously something that that seems to be popular in the care world.
Well, I think it is, because I think myself, and I probably think I've done 999 things wrong, got one thing right, is that actually, and that's my culture all the way along the campaigning, which you might ask me about later, really, is that never give up. Sometimes it'll work. Like do a Rubik's Cube is so many combinations.
Absolutely.
I can't do that either.
I've never managed to do a Rubik's Cube myself. I remember trying once, failing miserably, and thinking to myself, this could take me a long time. I don't think I have the correct aptitude, let's say. But anyway, you mentioned culture a couple of times. That's a subject that I'm immensely passionate about. Tell me about what's your view on so how important is it to have the right culture in a care business?
Definitely. And I think we found that challenging when we've acquired, because we've acquired new business. We've gone along and changing the culture in that organisation to what we believe in. So it's very, very important, because I think that the motto, and again, I think other providers will share this, is I don't want to be on the receiving end of any poor care. I want people to treat people rightly. That's whether it's a colleague in a care home or in home care, as you want to be treated, and the same with the clients that come in, and the same with the relatives. I try to speak to staff, clients, and relatives as I want to be spoken to myself, and getting that culture in of showing that you go to the ends of the earth for the people in your care, whether they work for you or whether you provide care for them. And I want everyone to do that. Everyone's important, what they do at the top or the bottom, whatever goes. And I said at the beginning of this podcast that, you know, we've been at the bottom end and we've been through the middle, and we're, you know, whether at the top end, I don't know whether we say we're at the top end, but treating people properly. But that includes people we're buying services from and the general public in general, because I think everyone, there's too much rage going on in this world. You know, you can go in the supermarket to buy something. If you're fiddling around with something, people get, there's road rage, rage everyone. I think
rage.
Treat people better. Do you know, even I do the park runs every Saturday, and there's even rage at park runs now. It's got that bad. Is that if you get in the way of people's personal bests, you know, woe betide you. It's everywhere. But getting back to sensitive and culture is treating people as human beings. Now, I know that sounds obvious, but I think we lose sight of it. Everyone's in a rush. Everyone wants to, you know, do everyone down sometimes. I think we've got to make sure that we stop, and I try and put that forward in our business as much as I can.
You touched upon a really interesting subject there. So a lot of people who are aspirational care business owners, at one point or another, mergers and acquisitions, so that the purchasing of more care home businesses or bolting on kind of other businesses, whatever that might be, will be an important part of the agenda. And I think so. One of the things that so in my in the kind of day job outside of the podcast is my world is a kind of a management consultancy world, and one of the things that we talk about very often is that if you ever want to undergo any type of business transformation, usually you've got to undergo some type of cultural transformation and things as well. And a really hot topic of conversation is, okay, so when you buy a new business, and if it doesn't directly align or at some reasonable level kind of align with the business that you're buying culturally, obviously it's difficult. How do you then kind of instill the right culture in that business that you're purchasing? So tell me a little bit about your experiences from that end of the perspective as somebody that's obviously bought a handful of businesses now.
Yeah. Well, I think we've had various. So we've taken some homes that are good and some homes that requires improvement. I think from our perspective, if you see poor care and poor culture, you need to step on it immediately and solve it. How do you do that? Well, I think you have to come in and show those people who aren't following your rules. It's a bit tough, and you've got to be tough in business. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And tough. You've got to be a bit of everything, really. You have to deal with that firmly and fairly. But there are some tough decisions. So we have moved people on in our homes when we found they're not right, and you have to be brutal if people don't fit where you're coming from. And that is about making sure they treat their colleagues and clients right. So I think you've got to be tough on that. Do that straight away. When homes have worked a bit better, you go with the flow. I'm saying you come into a home, if it's working well, we're not going to change it. If it's not broken, don't fix it. If there's something wrong, we take action straight away. And I think staff can see you're doing something if it's not right. And I think they sometimes change themselves when they can see you doing something. But there's some individuals now however much work is they can't change. And that goes back to education right from the beginning, I think. In some parts of the country, I think the way people talk to members of the family themselves, it could be rude, and sometimes shouting is a normal part of life for them. So you can't expect them to suddenly change when they come to work, because that's how they live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we have to unfortunately move those on if we can't change them.
Sure. It's having that alignment in your team is just so important. It's an interesting one. I've been involved in various businesses over the years, and the teams of people that achieve the best things are the people who are most aligned. And there's so much tension and negativity that can be felt by a team if there is one person or a handful of people that are misaligned and who are kind of not working to the rule book. And that's not a case of being dictatorial as such. It's just a case of this is the standard that we hold each other to. And if you're not getting on board with that, then maybe you're not the right person there. And it's obviously, as you say, like it sounds like it can be quite brutal. And the process of getting rid of people is obviously hard and unpleasant. But you've got to think about the team of people that are aligned, and you've got to think about the people that you're looking after as well. Coming back to your point, humans deserve to be treated like humans. And if there's people that don't kind of get that concept, or they're not on board, then yeah, maybe they'd do a great job somewhere else. But if it's not the way that you do things, then that's the way that you've got to run a tight ship.
And I think we always try and give people another chance. So we'll try and change if we can, but we have to move them on if they can't. And that's sad if they have been brought up in the wrong way. And there's a debate whether what's right and what's wrong. I probably move outside the subject matter today, but generally speaking, you want people to treat people properly. If they can't, and you can't change them, then they want to move on. But I think we've got a responsibility to give people a chance and show them the way. And if they can't take it, then we have to move those people out of social care, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's right. I guess the people that sit at the extreme end of the spectrum, the people that you said that kind of that aren't right, they're the people that leave the sector exposed. And they're probably the people that the more negative, the more negative narrative that's kind of in the popular perception, if you like, that I guess they would leave you as an organisation more exposed to those types of things, which is it's just not worth it. And again, you can't risk your current team, and you can't risk the people you're looking after, of course.
I'm a great one for cliches, but there's that issue about only takes one rotten apple in a barrel. You have to deal with it because sadly it is a minority, but they can change it for the rest. If you're not careful, you can't leave them there. So I think going back to the beginning about saying is I think in any business you've got to have a range of talent, but particularly in social care, you've got to have every skill virtue that you need, I think, in a business, being compassionate and tough at the same time, all the way through. Finance expert, care expert, everything. It's one of the most challenging sectors I think there is out there, but people think it's easy.
There's an awful lot of dichotomies in what you've talked about there. There's actually a fantastic book. I'll get you a copy. It's written by a gentleman called Jocko Willink, and he's literally written a book on the dichotomies of leadership. So he's an ex-military chap that now runs a management consultancy. But there are so many things that I love the book. I've read it probably 4 or 5 times now, and there are so many things that he's learnt in his military and then in his kind of professional career or commercial career, I should say, that have great similarities to the care world. So yeah, I'll make sure I grab a copy when I come and see you in October. I'll bring you bring you on up.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. I always like to wrap the podcast up with a couple of really specific questions. Okay, so if you were going to give somebody looking to make a positive impact on the care sector one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be?
Yeah. Well, that's very tough. What could make a positive impact? I would say that you follow your instincts. Don't, and I mentioned this earlier, but don't ever give up, because the answers to making the impact aren't an overnight success. If you don't get where you want to, don't just give up. For goodness sake, please keep going. And my view has been, I'll probably be long gone, and in my own care facility. But one thing I'm keeping going is I'm not going to give up and getting the change. And I think everyone should have that. And that way, the positive impact is people not giving up will make those people see things have to change. So yeah, don't give up. Keep going.
I guess it's all about drive and determination and tenacity, just to keep pushing for improvements. I guess. And
it's easy to give up something. And I use that again. I mentioned briefly. I won't go on about them because I'm obsessed. I got about park runs. When you're on that park run, and yeah, they're only 5K, I say, but when you're on that 4K and you're exhausted, is you've got to keep going.
Got to keep going.
Personal best. So same thing. Keep going. Don't give up, even if it's tough. You will get there.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you. And tell me, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received personally?
Right. Well, again, I would say that the best one I've received, and I would use this analogy in social care businesses. I'm not a great academic, and I haven't, got massive qualifications. I'd say is that the business world and social care in particular is follow common sense, because I think if you follow that, you won't go far wrong. So what I try and do is what seems the right way. I use my common sense to get me through the situation. I haven't gone, I've made mistakes, of course, I said earlier, but I haven't gone too far wrong. And I think that would be is follow common sense. If you do that, you won't go wrong.
I think that's a great piece of advice as well. So Mike, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the Care Home Show again. Hopefully we'll get to do an episode in the real world rather than just the digital world. But no, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for taking part. And I just reiterate again, if you wouldn't mind, once more, Simon, about people coming up to see this part of the world, but also Celebrate Social Care. Do come; it'd be great. Love to have you on board and see, and let's try and work together. And if anyone wants to help with the campaigning, I'd love to talk about how we can join hands and make somebody, government in particular, sit up and take notice.
I think that's a really good point. So two things there. So remind the audience of the web address for the Celebrating Social Care, and then also as well let the people know exactly how can they contact you if they're interested in a conversation about the campaigning side of things. Thank
you. Well, from Celebrate Social Care, it's obviously the web address, and then it's celebratesocialcare.com. All the details are on there. And then if you want to contact me, should I give you a mobile number or should I an email? What's the best thing, Simon?
Email address is probably best,
Right. So my email, I'll spell all this out for you. So I've got an unusual surname. So it's m.padgham, that's Padgham, and I'm going to spell St. Cecilia's out because not many people can spell it, believe it or not. So it's at S for Sierra, T for Tango, C for Charlie, E for Echo, C for Charlie, I for India, L for Lima, I for India, A for Alpha, S for Sierra.co.uk.
Superb. I'll make sure the all those details are on the show notes as well. But Mike, again, a pleasure, and I look forward to catching up with you soon. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All the best.